All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the Hudson Institute. My name is Lee Allen, and I'm representing the Joint Baltic American National Committee, an organization dedicated to making Baltic voices louder in Washington since 1961. Today, we are going to examine the US-Baltic relationship in our event titled Perfect Allies, Examining US-Baltic Relations Under the Trump Administration. Secretary Rubio, in a readout of the meeting with the three Baltic ministers, emphasized the strong ties to Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, reinforcing the commitment to Baltic security. Further, President Trump said, "The Baltics have a tough neighborhood, but we're committed in not the most convincing fashion." The waters of the transatlantic relationship have become turbulent with some of the populist rhetoric from the current administration. And here to navigate these choppy waters, I'm joined by Ambassador Kalev Stoicescu, Chairman of National Defense Committee of the Estonian Department. I'm also joined by the former Lithuanian ambassador, Evidas Bajarunas, who is also a visiting fellow at SIPA. We're also joined by Olive Sneakers, who is the president of the Baltic Security Foundation, and the most difficult name of all, Luke Coffey from the Hudson Institute. So welcome all of you to help us navigate these transatlantic waters. Luke, why don't I start with your opening comments first?
Great. Well, welcome everyone to Hudson Institute. The Baltics are always welcome here, especially Baltic Americans. We've hosted numerous groups over the years here focusing on Baltic security, Baltic-related issues, and it's always an honor to do so. You know, there's a lot to be said about the way the United States approaches the Baltic region and how it fits into the broader transatlantic security piece. And a lot of developments, of course, have happened since Russia's large-scale invasion of Ukraine in February of 2022. I think perhaps in terms of the Baltics, it was a wake-up call that not only is deterrence necessary, but that if we play our cards right, if we have the right policies in place, if we have the right troops and capabilities in the region, we can stop a Russian invasion of NATO territory, especially the Baltic, one of the three Baltic states. People say, well, you know, the Baltic states are small. This isn't going to happen. Russia will be in there quickly. There's not much we'll be able to do about it. You have some other think tanks around town. I won't mention any names. I was going to say something clever to give the clue, but I'm not going to do that. Say that, you know, in 96 hours, Tallinn would be captured. But what was one of the lessons that we learned with Russia's invasion of Ukraine? Think about the size of that Russian invasion force that came from Belarus to Kyiv. Think about the relatively short distance that invasion force had to travel to capture Kyiv. That is a distance not too dissimilar from the Estonian-Russian border to Tallinn. And look what the Ukrainians were able to do, because they had the will to fight for their homeland, which for whatever reason isn't often factored in to these war games that we do here thousands of miles away in Washington, D.C. It's because the Ukrainians knew every single bridge, ditch, road intersection, swamp, forest, side road, back road, creek, river, pond between the border with Belarus and Kyiv. And this would be the same for, let's say, Estonia. I know I'm picking on Estonia here, but for sake of an example, this would be the same. The Estonians would be fighting for their land. They would know all the local features, all the local topographical features, where to defend, where not to defend. So yes, the Baltic states can be successfully defended, and this is what our mindset should be. This should be the lesson that we take from Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And I've been writing about Baltic security issues for years. My first big report in Washington, D.C. on this issue was in 2013. People were asking me, why am I writing about defense of the Baltic states in 2013? I gave my reasons why in the report, which you could find online. But you know what? Within a year after the annexation of Crimea, it's what everyone was talking about was the defense of the Baltic states. And there are some who are advocating for we need U.S. boots on the ground as a tripwire on a tripwire mission. So if Russia does invade and a US soldier is injured or, God forbid, killed, that would bring in all of NATO and the United States into the fight. I never subscribed to this argument. As a former junior Army officer, the last mission I ever want to be on is the tripwire mission. We need to be in it to win it from the beginning, and we can, especially if we apply the lessons we learned from Ukraine. Another factor resulting from the war in Ukraine that has changed the dynamics in the Baltic region is the entry of Sweden and Finland formally into NATO. This has removed any ambiguity that might have existed on what role Finland or Sweden would have played or might have played if there had been a contingency operation in the Baltics. History shows us, going back through the military history of the region, that you cannot conduct military campaigns in the greater Baltic Sea region without using or accessing what is now Swedish and Finnish territory, islands, water. So the idea that NATO would have been able to easily respond to a contingency without access to Finland and Sweden's air, space, or land was, I would say, naive. But now we don't have to worry about that because they're firmly in the alliance, which makes the alliance safer. But it also means that we have to stop viewing things like Baltic security or Nordic security or Arctic security. We have to start looking at Northern European security. And last year, Peter Rao and I, this is Washington, D.C., so there's no such thing as shameless self-promotion. So I'll promote my paper I wrote with my colleague Peter Rao, where we looked at the geopolitical changes in Northern Europe require a fresh approach to the region, where we look at how do we look at the security of the region as a whole, not just Baltic security, not just Nordic security, not just Arctic security. So this is another change, I would say. But the Baltic states have also learned a lesson, and that is if you show seriousness about spending and investing on defense, then you're likely to get in the good graces of this administration. And all three Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, set the example inside in the alliance on defense spending, and I think this is recognized and appreciated by many in the administration. And when you also factor in the contributions that the three Baltic states have made to Ukraine in terms of material and government support, we're looking at, in some cases, almost 2% of GDP provided to Ukraine by some of these countries. This is monumental. It comes at a time when the U.S., if you measure by GDP per capita, we're giving about 0.2% of America's GDP to Ukraine. 0.2%, which puts us like on the league tables behind geopolitical and economic powerhouses like Austria, Malta, Cyprus. So in many ways, the Baltic states are setting the example, which I think is appreciated by the United States in particular, but specifically this White House. So we've had a very sobering, somber reminder today that even training exercises are not without real-world consequences. And we had the tragic incident of 4 American soldiers in Lithuania that during a training exercise, their heavy recovery vehicle hit some sort of bog or some sort of swamp, and they went missing. I think the latest is the Lithuanian and American officials have recovered 3 of the 4 bodies. But it is a reminder that just because it's training, just because we're not in a state of war, this is serious stuff with serious consequences. And I think this tragic incident has shown the fraternity between Lithuania and America, which is shared with the 2 other Baltic states as well. So I guess my message here today to conclude is that the Baltic states matter because Europe matters, and don't let anyone tell you that they're undefendable or it's not worth our time or effort, because they certainly are defendable if we want them to be, and that we need to make that case everywhere, whether it's with this administration or on Capitol Hill. And I understand that's why many of you are here today. So I wish you the best of luck with that, and I look forward to any questions anyone might have as we progress with the panel. Thank you.
So I guess as we progress, Mr. Stoichescu, if you had any opening comments, maybe you can speak to something a little different than Luke touched on. I know Luke touched on the impacts of Baltic security as a result of the invasion of Ukraine. Obviously, how do we approach this new administration? The new administration is characterized as having a more reciprocal relations with, or needing a reciprocal relationship. How is the Estonia-US relationship reciprocal in your words?
Well, thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here, and many thanks to the Hudson Institute for having invited me here. Many years ago, I spent 3 years here as ambassador of Estonia to the United States. From 97 to 2000, that was the period when we were, so to say, singing and dancing ourselves into NATO. That was a unique window of opportunity that we used successfully, and here we are now. You asked me a question about how to approach the present US administration. I mean, it's not a personal relationship in a way, although persons matter and leaders of states and government matter, but we see this as a relationship between countries, between peoples. If we speak of defense, between armed forces, and for us, if we speak of solidarity, for instance, that is there, it's the core of the alliance. This is not just about political statements, nice words being spelled out somewhere. This is about practical cooperation. Then we have been together in difficult missions and very dangerous zones in the Middle East and some other parts. So this is how we have created a cooperation and have cemented it with the United States. I'm being the chair of the National Defense Committee in our parliament, or the Armed Services Committee, how is it called over here. Now we are in the process of adopting very important decisions for our country in the future, raising the level of defense expenditures to more than 5% of our country's GDP. This is an extreme effort. We may spend even more. And we are not doing this just because to please someone, but we are doing this rather to deter someone else. And we're in the business of deterrence. 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. We cannot afford weakness because we live next to a predator state. And they look for opportunities. They look for weaknesses, and we manage very well. And I'm sure Latvia, Lithuania as well. So in that sense, we are not here, and I'm on a visit I'm going this afternoon to the Hill, and tomorrow and the day after tomorrow having meetings with quite a number of congressmen to, say, oh, we are not doing well, we want help. No, actually we can manage very well. But there is a but here, because we are small countries living next door to this aggressor. So obviously together we are strong in deterring that aggressor and avoiding war, because if deterrence fails and war comes, then we are all in big trouble. And that might be a much bigger one than in Ukraine. So we are obviously learning from Ukraine, as you said, whatever is appropriate for us, and we have understood that we need to protect our population, and we invest in that. Because, excuse me for the word, those bastards, if they cannot defeat our defense forces, they will start striking cities and killing innocent people. So we do not defend just a piece of land, our beloved Estonia, let's say, or Latvia. We defend people, because that land is not worth very much without the people. So And we have seen what they have done in occupied territories with the people. And in that sense, our concept of operations, okay, I'm using a term very specific, has changed, as you hinted. It's not about letting them overrunning and then liberating the country where there's nothing left and nobody left. This is not acceptable. And with this money that we're spending now, which is big money for us, billions and billions of euros or dollars, we want to acquire serious capabilities for self-defense, both to protect our cities, our populations, our military infrastructure, everything, but also to strike back. And this is serious stuff. And this is different from Ukraine. I mean, Ukraine is a much bigger country than we are. But Ukraine was not a member of NATO and is not a member of NATO or the European Union. And that makes a difference for the Russians. Mm. They take NATO and NATO, the nuclear umbrella that the NATO members enjoy seriously, at least to this point. And we hope that they will take it seriously in the future as well. Ukraine did not have a nuclear umbrella. So it was seen by them as a gray zone. The last one, together with Moldova, that they could attack, take it over. So, and it is for us, actually, to avoid this war, in a way, even though the Russians have remarkably demonstrated their ability to yet and again make big mistakes. There was a huge mistake 3 years ago to attack Ukraine in the way they did. They overestimated their own potential, conventional potential to wage war. They underestimated Ukraine's ability and willingness to defend itself. They underestimated the Western readiness to support Ukraine, and many others. They guessed a few things correctly, but mostly they were wrong, and this became basically a catastrophe. Would they learn from this and not repeat this in the future? I'm not very sure, but we have to convince them, and this is our job every day. And what deters them is to demonstrate our willingness to defend our country. We have been 200 years under Tsarist Russia, 50 years under Soviet occupation. It's not going to be a third time, for sure. We are going to defend our country. This is exactly what we communicate. And it is not like it was 10 years ago and so on, when we were militarily rather weak. We are rather strong for our size, and combined with all the other Baltic and Nordic countries, I think the Russians have there something to fear about. And we have the capability to resist and to strike back. So they have something to think about. And you're right to say that with the accession of Finland and Sweden to NATO, that too makes sense, because we don't have a strategic depth that Ukraine has from east to west, right? But with the accession of Sweden, the sea is our lifeline, and so on. And there are certain things that are there. Of course, the Russians may be pushing their luck to see all this go on, and this would depend very much on how the American administration would deal with the peace in Ukraine and all that. The very last remark, if I may. We are in a psychological war right now, and this is somehow forgotten. There are a lot of economic aspects to it, because Russia also had very precise economic motivations for attacking Ukraine, not just imperialistic stuff and so on. But this psychological war is such that it's the whole range from nuclear threats that they issue and to affect societies in the West, political elites, the decision makers, and so on, that still there is a fear that maybe it's going to be a nuclear war, you know, to paralyze things, to let people do wrong decisions or not do decisions, down to SMSs that they have sent in my country and in other countries to schools with bomb threats and so on, something to fuel confusion, fear, panic, and all this. And this is our first line of defense now, in this psychological war. And if we fail, it might be also the last line of defense. So, and their hope is to break us psychologically in order not even to launch an invasion, just to prevail through threats and intimidation. And this is what they are after. So we have to be strong and defy these attacks that they have. And the best scenario for Estonia, I presume for Latvia and so on, given our geography and history, is that even if we avoid military aggression, that we will have to resist these hybrid attacks in the future for many years. Different types, they cut cables, they do this, they do that, all sorts of provocations to show how nasty they are, to cause us trouble and to hurt us. And this is kind of a new normality in that sense. But we will learn to live with that. Thank you.
Very good. And Ambassador Bajarunas, I know you have some opening comments, and we just heard about hybrid attacks. A big point of contention now, especially in the Baltic states, is if there's an Article 5 challenge or if there is some kind of gray zone challenge, can the United States be relied upon? Can US defense articles be relied upon? I'm not sure if you may be able to touch upon that in your opening statement.
I will. First of all, thank you very much. First of all, organizers for invitation, and very, very pleased to be here. I would not probably avoid not to expressing my condolence to the 3 and probably 4 American soldiers who just we learned today they were found dead. And I think this event of 6 days, this evolving event where first of all the news came about American soldiers missing, and then I mean all Lithuania became united. And this is also before I make my initial comments, this is for me very remarkable. You know, after these 2 now nearly months of Trump administration, I probably would not avoid saying that there was a quite rough period in the Baltic countries, especially Baltic countries being most loyal, pro-American countries being mostly actually investing in American support. You know, if I remember, because I'm in diplomacy all my life, I'm still only for this year sabbatical, so I can speak a bit like not as a chair of the parliament, the parliamentary committee, but a bit more freely. So you know, we were always trying to cut all French initiative on Grande Armée coming from Paris regularly. I mean, so why? Because we believe that EU, we were very loyal EU member, but we also believe that there shouldn't be division of responsibilities. It should be, you know, NATO is doing defense, and Americans' presence American presence is guarantee of this defense. And that's, of course, as I said, this quite became a rough period with the Trump, with this contractual relations, with the value shifted into the corner, actually disappearing from the vocabulary of current administration, and with the Ukrainian negotiations, negotiations, where you see the aggressor and the country being attacked, they've been shifted. You don't know. When Trump spoke with Zelensky, you thought that Zelensky attacked Ukraine, Russia, and so on. So of course this was quite a rough period for Lithuanians. And usually, I was speaking a few times here already. I was asked, so what is your feeling? And I said, feelings is, you know, if any Baltic official would say very bad, least would say very bad, very, very bad. It's heartbroken. You know, our American friends are going out with these definitions which are not tuned to our ear of the democratic countries, value-based countries. Public would react even more dramatically, say, Americans, are they still coming? If we need them, are they still coming? So despite this quite gloomy sort of atmosphere in Vilnius vis-a-vis American administration, this 6 day, I was referring 6 days from the day of when we found out that Americans are missing, actually make me positive. That there is a big differentiation from this period, which is rough, We will not change American election results. Americans elected this administration. But we are investing in the future. And the future is that we still be 2 or 3, 4 of us, democratic countries. And of course, we should look to the future. So this is, as I said, as a tragic event of missing and then dead soldiers. It's a unified country. I left my office just half an hour ago. I saw Lithuania's one of biggest influential Andrius Tapinas even announced crowdfunding event. Lithuanians are now collecting money for the 4 American families, because they are families. Their sons and husbands came to defend Lithuania, to defend Baltic countries. There was not yet war. They were still training, but they came with the purpose to defend Lithuania. So they are our soldiers. And that is, I think, I really was shocked personally that this atmosphere of, you would expect anti-American feelings, suddenly heartbroken crowdfunding event. So few my remarks and leading to what you have asked about this hybrid. Of course, I will not repeat, the atmosphere is very bad. When you read announcements of President Trump and administration, with even this, what you look, you're referring to this, or you referring to this Oval Office Trump answer, where he was asked, okay, Poland, we are committed. The Baltics, yeah, they got a lot of tough neighborhoods. Okay, we are committed. I doubt there were many Lithuanians drinking champagne by hearing this sort of commitment. But then our ministers met with Rubio. He was more sort of stronger. Yeah, we are committed. But again, so this was like a pendulum. Day after, we were reading we were reading a report in Washington Post, which was leaking a Pentagon memo signed by Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, which says that America, I quote, unlikely to provide substantial, if any, support to Europe in case of Russian military advances. Although he added that nuclear umbrella would remain in place, which is, of course, very, very important. So all this, and then, of course, the Ukraine, I mentioned, when we were reading so much about and very hopeful of the Trump's injection to the peace negotiations with his Strength for Peace initiative, suddenly we see this Strength for Peace only being applied towards Zelensky, but and no attempts even to apply the same strategy vis-a-vis Putin. Only this weekend, last weekend, President Trump came again that he's, quote, pissed off of Putin, and he might sort of come back to the idea of sanctions. We know from our country's experience, you cannot push Russia to negotiate if Russia is in stronger position. And that is what we believe now started to be on the positive note. I believe this is the mission of our countries. Still continue to deliver this message or our understanding, our experience to current administration. Very tough, I know. I know whether they will listen to us. They might listen to us. They might listen to you, Baltic immigrants living here through your congressmen, and that there is only way to talk with Putin when Putin is pushed to the corner. I was among many other ambassadorship. I was Lithuanian ambassador to Moscow. Actually, I end up in Moscow at the beginning of the war, and actually 3 years, about 3 years ago, with a butcher, Lithuania decided to downsize embassy, and I was recalled. So I know how to deal with Russians, and this is what one positive things we should continue to deliver to Americans, to explaining how to deal with Russians. You asked about hybrid threats again. When we what we are reading, softening U.S. message on Russia, this is not going to support, it's just not going to minimize Putin's appetite to continue with this hybrid war. Contrary, it's opening for Putin new horizons where he might apply disinformation and sabotage operations. And that is where, again, we need Americans. We need to engage Americans in this. This is I think, in our interest. I started with this gloomy picture, but the picture is not as doom as one would expect. Baltic countries, we are integrated well into NATO, EU, into the institutions, contrary to what you kind of refer to this pre-war situation. We have armed forces which are well integrated and ready to. Lithuanians in 1939, I doubt they would have had many joint training with Estonian and Latvian forces. Now it's daily routine. It's daily routine. Either on bigger, smaller scale exercises, also engaging countries which are stationing in our in Baltic countries, British in Estonia, Germans in Lithuania, and Canadian, now Swedish in Latvia. So there is a lot of integration and training of our forces. So we're not in the situation of 39, 40, where we will be sort of when we will be catched by surprise. So this is a positive. Some of you already alluded to this really positive development, Swedish-Finnish membership to the alliance. Again, my personal experience, many years back, I was ambassador to Sweden, country which strongly investing into the non-alignment, in neutrality, 200 years no war, and suddenly, thanks to Mr. Putin, this country and neighboring Finland were convinced to join. So we definitely should benefit from this fact. If you look to the Baltic Sea, you see huge island in the center of the Baltic Sea, Gotland. Swedish control of the Gotland makes a huge difference for any supply of the Baltic countries or resupply. We were talking about sensitive part of the strategically sensitive part of the Baltic countries, Narva, Daugavpils, Estonia, Latvia, Suwalki Gap, Lithuania. Again, Suwalki Gap still continue to play dramatic role in the land supply of the Baltic countries, but not anymore monopoly role. So we still have a possibility now with the Swedish membership to continue to act more from other directions. Of course, EU finally came. Thanks God that all these crazy ideas of Grand Armée of French been converted into what we need, into the capability building. We do not need the new armies. We have Lithuanian, Estonian, Latvian army integrated now to NATO. But we need capabilities. We need more armaments. We need more munitions. We need air defense. And that is where I would really expect EU funding scheme under the new European White Book on Defense and Rearm Initiative would be very, very beneficial. We are not even integrated free Baltics. We are now part of Nordic Baltic family. Again, this is I think the big assets compared with many years back. Before Swedish-Finnish membership in 2023, our all Nordic Baltic engagements were a bit of softer line. They were not part of NATO. They were not part of integrated NATO regional plans. And that's why we were not able to benefit from this Nordic Baltic integration. Now we are. I think this Swedish contingent in Latvia is the symbol how much important to have close ally. We of course have also another regional initiative which I believe is very important. British Nordic Baltic, JEF, Joint Expeditionary Forces, which again symbolize that we are not locked into the free Baltic ghetto period. We are integrated into the much more vibrant mosaic, which of course NATO playing a critical role, but not, again, monopolist role. We still have other opportunities. So I would summarize that apart from panicking, contrary to panicking, Baltics are quite well maneuvering into this rough current situation of changes in Washington. And this is, I think, the positive side. We are definitely still strongest supporters of NATO, with understanding that one day Americans might not be here. One day Americans might say to us, guys, now it's up to you. That is important, but we're not yet here. We're still investing in NATO presence in Lithuania, American presence in Lithuania. We are, of course, benefiting from EU defense investment and defense cooperation. And of course, we are investing into what we call Finnish model of the civil defense and the resilience model, where sort of total defense, or now, as now Finns used to call it, comprehensive security, in the all society model, where not only our armed forces or specialized units will play a role, but also each individual will play a role. And this is what will make us quite a nasty enemy for any outside forces to come and to occupy us. And this is what the colleague Kalev mentioned, this notion of deterrence is about. Not numerous armed forces, but total societal support, which also covers the aspects what you've been asking about hybrid threats. So this is my initial sporadic remarks.
Very great. Well, Mr. Nikers, if you could, Latvia obviously had made lots of societal sacrifices with the reintroduction of conscription, with high GDP spend on defense. I know in your opening comments, you'll be commenting on some of those defense issues, if you would.
Of course. I'm glad to speak with you today. First of all, I would like to present 3 facts, I think, that demonstrate Latvia as a perfect ally for America. We have always stood with America, especially since 9/11. Among the most important examples are the facts that we supported US in Iraq and in Afghanistan. We pay for our defense and security. Latvia has allocated 3.66% of GDP for defense this year, and already we aim it for 5%. We do our homework, strengthening self-defense capabilities and making society more resilient. For Latvia, America is a strategic ally. No one can dispute that thanks to President Trump, Europeans are thinking about their security. We appreciate that thanks to President Trump's policy, strength of transatlantic security is increasing. As member countries encouraged by his legacy during the first presidency already are paying much more attention to the certain capabilities and allow necessary resources in building more solid and credible defense and security system. Certainly, we share aspirations for peace and security in Europe. That war must end in Ukraine, and long-lasting peace must be cemented so that a major war can be prevented in the future. Only American leadership can make this happen. In the Baltics, we do not see any other alternatives. We believe in regional security within the framework of transatlantic partnership, which is not possible without US leadership. Currently, Latvia is looking forward to maintain existing defense cooperation that will make it possible to acquire American air defense systems, long-range weapon systems, ammunition. Of course, American military equipment would be the best choice for our defense. That would benefit both the transatlantic security and the economy of America at the same time. Also, it is important to continue international military education and training program that allows for training of Latvian soldiers at the US military academies to ensure our interoperability. In 2024, Latvia received a total of $80 million in military aid from the United States, which helped with many of the mentioned objectives. The growth of European and American economy goes hand in hand. Europe is the biggest export market for almost all US states. Until Europe is capable of fully defending itself, it matters to both sides of the Atlantic that the American force posture, especially along the eastern flank, remains strong. All this is making economic and military sense, remaining US troops in Europe rather than sending them back home. Geopolitical reasons would suggest significant restructuring of the American forces towards to the eastern flank. Of course, those developments that we already successfully made within our society, that we are back to conscription, we are introducing a compulsory subject in the schools, in Latvian schools, the National Defense course. This all is something that we understand that we should bring our society all together in order to face the possible Russian invasion and hybrid threats altogether. We believe that this is not, there will be not like just an army who can help us out, or just US who will come following the fifth paragraph of the Transatlantic Treaty. This is whole society that will come together united in the moment of crisis, and this, I think, is one of the most deterring effects on Russia, that they see what we do within our societies, that they really will realize that the big cost of the possible invasion, that they will pay a big cost for that, and they will pay hard, and they will lose so much. So this is something that, when we are thinking of making that deterrence credible, the first thing that we should do is look within our societies. We should bring the Baltic countries all together. And I agree with this. We have those fantastic arrangements that are working right now, but I believe that we can do better. So this is, as we are saying these days, those words a lot. In my opinion, we just should completely, as much as possible, synchronize Baltic defenses, as much as possible. Synchronize all the interoperability, so making it all possible, exchange of classified information, all mobility, all those operational plans should be put together. And this is how we can succeed. Thank you.
Excellent. So we'll open the floor to one or two audience questions. I will, yes.
Actually, we have a microphone coming for you.
Usually I'm the very loud one, always in the audience, but it's okay. So it seems like military manufacturing should be a very obvious way for all three sisters, right? Can you kindly comment if and how our diaspora can contribute? Are there any plans, and is there a good information to share with us for personal investments or for small business investments if we choose to? Thank you.
Thank you. It's a very good question, because it's not just about buying stuff for defense, weapons, ammunition, all sorts of military equipment and material. It's about producing as well. And maybe I will make an extra comment here about the alliance, the North Atlantic Alliance. It's not just about it having been based on values and a commonly perceived threat. from the outside, but it has a business dimension. It has always had. I mean, buying defense equipment from each other. Those who don't have at all defense industry, they would, and they have armed forces, they will have to buy literally everything from others. So now perhaps this business dimension is been more emphasized than ever before, so to say, perhaps at the expense of other dimensions, but this is how it is. And in Estonia, we have developed a defense industry, about 150 companies, mostly rather small, but still, with a turnover last year of about €500 million, which for a country the size of Estonia is pretty well, not bad. And we hope that at this pace we may achieve a turnover in maybe 3 years of about €1 billion. And they are really looking for big and small and medium investors and partners of cooperation. Very good potential for exports, but also the Estonian state, while we procure more and more, our clear line is to localize stuff. I mean, to try to buy from our own industry as much as possible. Of course, we will still continuously buy stuff from America, from other countries, but to buy more and more, because that helps also our economy in these troubled times. And you may Google, take a look at the Estonian Defense Industry Association or whatever. There are lots of stuff. It depends on what the interests are. I mean, there are, if you wish, I may give you some contacts or whatever you may look at it. But any investors whom you may bring into Estonia or Latvia or Lithuania, because all of us have defense industries, are very much welcome now. Particularly, even with the COVID crisis, we clearly saw how in times of crisis the chains of supply may be seriously affected, if not disrupted, you know, and this is why we are building in Estonia a defense industrial park now to start producing our ammunition ourselves, maybe even artillery ammunition, 155s or whatever. I mean, whatever is needed, because you need ammo, and we know what it. To put it bluntly, this is not a state secret or any red kind of information that's been openly discussed. I mean, you may look at this, that one day of full battle in terms of artillery munition could cost 100 million. If a country the size of ours buys ammo for 300 or 500 million, you buy yourself 3 days, 5 days of fighting with the Russians on your own. But fortunately, we are not alone if we are to fight. So, as it was rightly said, we have allies, and we hope we can count on our allies, including the United States. And my message here to the congressmen with whom I will meet is that we see NATO clearly as mutually beneficial. We invest a lot now in defense in Europe, but not in order to invite the US to leave Europe, rather vice versa, to alleviate the burden of the United States for being present in Europe and so on, and also to be ready to support the United States if necessary elsewhere, because this relationship has to be mutually beneficial, and Europe has to pay a fair share for the defense in this relationship, and that is precisely what we're doing.
If I would put a few comments, which I think to this excellent question. First, I will not repeat what was previously said, but very specific comments. One is definitely military industry cooperation is very political. And here, of course, Lithuania, probably Latvia, Estonia, doing the same. We will continue to buy German, because we have German troops on our ground. That's why there is a big project of tanks, Leopards. We will definitely continue to buy Americans, because this is in our interest to keep Americans engaged. That's why the Apache project and HIMARS projects are, I mean, this is also political, but also this is technologically important to keep them. So I know this is not probably the right time to say, bring American companies invest in Lithuania with the Trump's administration doing contrary things. But Minister Šakalienė, who was visiting, Minister of Defense, who was visiting months ago, approximately US, she came through all big players in US with a very simple message. We can cooperate. We might buy, but if you have something to do in Lithuania, some spare parts, or we would be happy. And this is what each country might do, but we especially, let's cooperate. Let's make industry cooperation. This is, my second message, we do have some specific qualities which might be beneficial from US. Laser industry of Lithuania or semiconductor industry. So this is where we can find some niches where Lithuania, we will not probably assemble Apache, and we are not aiming. But if we will do some small pieces for Apache, if Apache will be Lithuania, that would be already very beneficial. My third element is Lithuania is close to the front line. That's why Rheinmetall invested in Lithuania, and next year there will be a big ammunition factory in the middle of Lithuania with the view that the war will not end. Even with a ceasefire, hopefully we are praying to Mr. Trump and his efforts, but the war and aggressive Russia will not end. So we need to bring some industries closer to Ukraine, in Ukraine, closer to Ukraine, in Lithuania, in the Baltic countries. So this is also geography matters. And of course, fourth and final, many Lithuanian companies, very probably similar size, innovative Lithuanian companies in defense industries, they are not sitting in Lithuania, innovating, and they are on daily basis engaged with Ukraine. Whenever drones produced in Lithuania or planned to be produced in Lithuania, it goes through the battle tested in Ukraine. So this is what our cooperation came about. There are many projects where we actually, okay, it's sounds very brutal to say we're benefiting from the war. We are not. But we are benefiting from the Ukrainian experience, from those Lithuanians who go to Ukraine front and come back to Lithuania. Because this is what, again, makes our countries on the edge of new military developments. This is what I would answer briefly.
And is it
just
you have 2 minutes
to
for
add
a
a couple
comment?
of words. Yeah, that defense industry top priority also for Latvia. We started this, and as well in understanding that this is one of the key aspects of our self-defense and capability building. So everything is we welcome everything, all investments, all donations, anything could help. So thank you.
So we have about 5 minutes left in our session here today. I'll reserve the last question just for brevity. Luke, I guess in 5 minutes or less, what are the implications for the US-Baltic relationship if Ukraine is not given a hard security guarantee and or sidelined in negotiations?
Well, the consequences would ripple across the alliance, perhaps not immediately, but certainly in the medium to longer term, because as it was already alluded to, even if there's a ceasefire, Russia will be back. And we have to plan and we have to assume this in our thinking. The best case scenario is that there is some sort of peace agreement that is perceived by the Ukrainians as being fair, and there are some sort of security guarantees that will never meet the level that's really needed of NATO membership. But this will buy Ukraine a few years. It'll buy supporters for Ukraine in the West a few years to try to get Ukraine better prepared for when Russia tries it again. It is in their DNA since the late 1500s and Ivan the Terrible to the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917. If you average it out, Russia advanced and annexed 55 square miles a day. So just because there's a temporary ceasefire doesn't mean that Russia is going to stop. And this also impacts any notion or idea that we can remove US forces from Europe, because we now have some sort of agreement with Russia. This would be hopelessly, dangerously naive to do. And we shouldn't forget that already 90% of America's ground force is located in the United States. 2/3 of our Navy is already attached to the Indo-Pacific Command. So I'm not sure what more we're talking about when we say we're going to reprioritize Asia. So what we have in Europe now, I would say, is the bare minimum. And considering the economic importance of Europe, being our largest export market, being the largest source by trillions of dollars of foreign investment into the United States, we need to make sure that this region stays secure. So if Ukraine doesn't have a just and fair peace, if Ukraine is not secure and safe, then we will continue to have problems in the future.
If I may compliment just one word about this. Russia's chief spy Naryshkin was asked, where are Russia's borders in the West? And he answered bluntly, right there where you stop us. So we have to stop them in Ukraine.
Exactly.
Absolutely. I know in the audience you probably have one or two thoughts or questions in your mind. This event doesn't stop the conversation. We'll have a private event following the end of the live stream, and you're free to ask questions to any of the experts who linger or remain. So with that being said, I just want to thank Luke Coffey, Ambassador Stoicescu, Ambassador Bayarunas, and also all of Nikos for joining us. If we can have a round of applause for